Hello, welcome. And we are here for our HR Huddle today, April 11th. And we hope you are having a good start to your week. Hey, Jen.
Hi.
We are going to continue our discussion, our kind of three-part series that we've been working on, which has been sourcing, screening, and today we're going to talk about onboarding. And so the prior to HR huddles, if you missed them, are on those other two topics. You can go pick them up on our website or our YouTube channel. And then today we're going to dive into some onboarding, maybe best practices or considerations, especially as we've moved into the blended environment. I was on the phone again today with another firm, and one of their big projects this year is revamping their orientation and onboarding. And I think that's where I'll start is I saw something flash by me in social media that orientation is not onboarding, and we agree it's part of onboarding. And I think sometimes we think onboarding is like this orientation, just really quick, HR function, but it is much, much broader than that. So we thought we would start and, talk about, well, what does that encompass or what does that entail? And so I think we could back up and say, why is this topic important? Why are we stopping to talk about orientation and onboarding, and why is it so important? And I think it ties to the topic of capacity and engaging our team members and making sure they're successful and they stay with us. And I think their experience that first 90 days, 6 months, up to a year is super critical with their perception of the firm, them having a sense of belonging, them feeling like they made the right choice by choosing your firm. And so we think it's critical, to pay attention to how are we doing to help set them up for success. And that's all, due to our onboarding process. So Jen, I don't know if setup or anything else that you would say, why this topic is so critical, or maybe what you've been experiencing, talking with some of the firms that you've been speaking with.
Well, yes, I had a few thoughts. One is Caroline Reddy is new to us. She's in the background on our StreamYard. And I was just thinking how silly it is that we didn't make her be in the foreground today with us to talk about, her experience. Not that we're going to do that, Caroline, but that, she's just about to be 90 days old. She introduced herself this morning on a team call and said, I'm about to hit 90 days, and so when Tamera was talking, I was just thinking about Caroline as an example of somebody that, you spend a lot of energy trying to find the right person. We talked about that the last two times, sourcing the right candidate and screening the holy heck out of them and making sure they're going to be a cultural fit and that they have the skills and that you feel like you can offer something to them that they are going to benefit in their life because of their coming to work at your firm. And we spend all this energy on it. And then a lot of firms, it's a little bit like we get tired at the finish line or something. And, or we think the hiring, the offer letter and the acceptance of that, bam, okay, now I can let down and relax. I'm going to go sit down for a while. The race is run, right? No, that wasn't the race. That was the warm up. You're supposed to now start strong with the person from the very first day, have that first day be thought out. Some firms, they send premium gifts. They say, hey, here's our logo and stuff. Thank you. Handwritten notes. The first day there's maybe some swag or whatever on the desk if it's in person. Their laptop is there. It's ready to be used. We hear stories about people on their first day showing up at physical locations. Now, maybe this is pre-pandemic because maybe now with so much remote, you can't get away with this. But, showing up and going to the front desk receptionist and saying, hi, I'm Jen Wilson here for my first day. And they go, well, we're not expecting you. And they call back to the department and the department head's like, what? Today's the first day. We're not ready. And, they make the person go sit, like there's not even a cubicle assigned. There's no machine for them. I mean, what a gory welcome. And I don't care if it's in the middle of busy season that the person starts. You can't do that to people. It feels like, wow, what a disorganized train wreck I've joined. And so I know most of us listening are not that bad, right? So, and it's okay if we make a mistake here or there and clean up day 2 is infinitely better or something, but we're supposed to be thoughtful about this process. And it's for all the reasons that Tamera stated. We've got to think out that first week. Now, I do think a lot of us think onboarding is orientation, and it's a week-long process, and we throw 6 people together into it, and we have a checklist of stuff, and we have speakers who come, and bam, orientation over, sink or swim, kid, or
You're
something.
all ready.
Yeah.
You're all, baked.
Yeah, and then later, like month 4, we're like, we taught you that in orientation. That 1 week fire hose that no one remembers. So no, that's not it. But you do have to think through that first week. And yes, it's fine for them to meet everybody, and nice if they could have a meal with them. We are a completely remote business, so we still try to get as many of our team members to have a lunch with the person on their first day as we can. Sometimes that last time I came to a lunch for somebody and I was in New York traveling, so I just attended for a little while, but I at least wanted to show up and say, hey, here I am, so we do want to leave an impression that they're important and that we've done some thinking and planning for them, for sure. But then onboarding is so much more. So Tamara, maybe you want to talk a little bit more about that, the broader, longer range.
Well, and I'm going to give it a structure first, and then we can talk about maybe what some components are that would, be included in it. So we would do an onboarding plan, and we use an Excel spreadsheet. We're happy to share it with you. If you want us to send it to you, you can customize and tailor it, but you can see the kinds of things that we include. So for sure, that first week, in pre the first day, like Jen said, we've got somebody that's on the laptop. We've got somebody sending some premiums. Sending a note. The last person that joined had a birthday before she joined us, and we were all wishing her happy birthday, before she even became part of our team. That week before it happened to be her birthday, and somebody smart on our team noticed that. And so, thinking about, what all of those things are leading up to the first day, and then the first 90 days for sure. And it probably goes out longer than that, but we create a plan, and then we make assignments for who owns each one of those so that it can get scheduled. We do a really good job of making sure the first couple weeks are pretty scheduled out, because that new person is going to come in and not know anybody. And we could say, go on people's calendars and all of that. That feels a little awkward. So we make sure that those kinds of things are set up. But that new person, that new hire, can own their plan once we orient them to it, once we get them set up, and then they can make sure all of the things that they need to do, the different meetings, the different trainings, if they need to go read about, on the website, read the handbook, they can make sure all of that stuff is happening, check it off. They'll be assigned somebody that owns their onboarding. And so they can make sure that they're meeting with them, a couple times a week, probably, along with their hiring manager. If that wasn't their hiring manager, it could be somebody in HR, or, in our case, it's our operations manager. She is the one that is responsible for the onboarding. And so, she works with the hiring manager and that new team member to make sure it happens. So having some kind of structure and some kind of, checklist or some kind of plan, whether it's in Excel or something else, I think is important. And then look to make sure that we have those meetings scheduled, and the technology access. And we talk about, different topics. We would assign different topics. So Jen might talk about, the history of our firm, and I'll talk about, our team members and, our structure and ownership. Ownership is very important. What does that mean? How do we use that? So we split up topics, and that is indicated in our onboarding plan so that we know what to cover. Now, it doesn't mean I'm not going to cover or add to something that maybe Jen talked about, or, we'll go over it again. We do believe in the law of 7 in communication, and hearing it from a different person's perspective, I think, is also important. So, learning about the different services that your firm offers, or the different technologies and how they're used. We would caution like a week of that fire hose Jen talked about, and make sure we don't just do all kinds of technical training or technology training that they're not going to use for 4 months. Look and schedule it out. And it's a tricky balance. We don't want them to sit bored, but we also don't want them to get this fire hose. They don't use it, and then it's like, I don't remember, I got to do it all over again. And then they feel inadequate. We don't want to set them up for that. So we want to make sure that we have a plan for those things.
For sure. And, it's okay, like Tamara said, to have a little bit of reiteration from different perspectives. Another thing that I think is really important for onboarding, and it's really any level, every job, bring them along on things. Get them to experience different things that those that are busier are doing. Because when the person starts, they have what we call empty desk syndrome. So they have nothing going on. And we're completely remote. And so if you start with us and you have nothing going on, you could feel like upset, or scared, or like, what's wrong with this job that I'm got nothing to do. So like Tamera said, we like to schedule those first couple weeks, but I just messaged somebody today that's newer than Caroline even. And I said, hey, let's go through my calendar and identify things on my calendar that you'd like to come and shadow, because I completely welcome you to come. I don't care what they are. And, of course, I'll ask permission if they're client specific, but love to have you come along. And so, like making sure somebody's doing that thinking and ensuring that your person is occupied, not overwhelmed, like Tamera said, not fire hosed, but also not like left alone to their own devices, feeling inadequate and scared and afraid to put their hand up and say, by the way, I have nothing to do over here. Because most of us feel afraid that if we said that somebody's going to go, uh-oh, did we even need that job? And we're all smart enough to know we need every person, right? Right now, we're super, most of us are snowed and we need everybody. But to get them productive, if there's nobody to specifically train them on something that moment, bring them along to everything else you're doing. It's a wonderful thing for them to get that experience and also to be exposed to people at different levels. I think in a lot of firms, we have like seniors are going to shepherd the associates and supervisors will shepherd the seniors. And so like a partner, sometimes we meet partners and they're like, yeah, I don't really interact with the staff. I only know the managers, we're like, what? What? And I don't care how big you are. You got to know people at different levels in your firm and connect them and Velcro them to us, but also get to know them yourself, experience them directly, because you may see in them gifts and skills and talents and abilities that could be used differently or faster than we thought when we dreamed of hiring them. And who else will figure that out? So just like really thinking about how you could make sure every person gets lots of different experiences.
I think that is so important. And they're going to find people they click with or that they can ask questions and then follow up, accordingly. And you made me think about introductions. So make introductions in the firm for sure. Don't take for granted that they know or they got the org chart or anything like that. Like make an introduction, but also make an introduction to clients, make an introduction to maybe if they're responsible for certain vendor relationships, like we have a new marketing person, introducing her to our website, folks, those kinds of introductions. And that handoff, I think, is super important. And we've found that most people are so excited when there's somebody new that they're introducing them to, and it makes them feel comfortable. And that's a great way you'll start to find some low-hanging fruit on things that they can follow up with and own and start to fill their plate and feel like they're contributing. That's the number one thing that your new team members want to do, is feel like they're contributing as soon as possible. So we want to find ways to do that.
For sure.
So I think remote is something else we need to talk about. This whole onboarding. I know a lot of firms in the last 2 years over the pandemic have revamped their onboarding because they had to in some respects, because so many people were working remote. And how do we do the training? How do we do the different sessions that we have to do? How do we teach them the technology? But also, how do we build those relationships? I hear partners all the time say, I used to meet people in the hallway and now I don't have access to those new interns or those new hires, when they come on, and we're like, you need to go find them on Teams, or we have a welcome email that comes out. We reply back and say, welcome, Caroline. We're excited to meet you. And maybe it's schedule 15 minutes and find something on my calendar so that we can have a more formal welcome. I could also do that on Teams. I could say, I'm so glad to see you here. Good morning. I hope your week is going well. We haven't had a chance to connect. Let's find a time to do that. And so it is a shift. And, for some of us, maybe it's something that we are not used to doing. And so we have to find ways to do that. Now, if I have somebody planning a good onboarding, plan, my orientation and onboarding plan, that's part of what we're doing. But individually, we can find ways to welcome folks, in the remote environment and, provide those resources, provide those meetings, have, a video meeting or a video lunch, I think is super important too.
Yes. And Tamara, if you are multi-office, multi-location, you're blended hybrid, you've got on-premise in an office, and you also have people remote, we would centralize onboarding. It doesn't mean the actions in the onboarding spreadsheet, the steps are all done centralized, but there's a centralized process, a singular process that people are brought through. And there's a centralized owner of that process who's making sure that people are getting a consistent onboarding experience. One of the most wonderful things about the pandemic was a lot of firms were forced to both onboard centrally because people were getting onboarded remotely and not related to an office. So they couldn't delegate it to that office to handle. And they were also forced to manage their interns on a central basis. And what ended up happening is, like some firms would say, well, we have really good luck with interns from these markets, but those markets, we really can't keep those interns. And when they went to a central intern experience or a central onboarding experience, suddenly those kind of crummy experiences people were having, they didn't have anymore.
Right.
And it wasn't crummy because those people in that office stink. It might've been because those people in that office are too busy, or that's not their gift set, or they didn't have a format or a process for it. And so that inconsistency of experience is so bad for your brand as an employer. It hits you on Glassdoor, and it hits you, in Reddit and in other places. So for the multi-office folks or the blended hybrid folks, for sure, centralization is your friend. And we would not go back to a decentralized model of managing it after you do more in person.
Right. I think that's a really good point. I think the other thing that I would add when you're looking at your onboarding plans is, how much of it can we have recorded and then schedule people to follow up. I know that is a challenge with our capacity right now is I have to spend the time and onboard people, and we want to invest in people. We want to do it well, but it takes away time from, managers or partners or, seniors, whatever it might be. And if I don't happen to have a group of people or they're coming at different times, it's like I feel like I'm repeating it over and over again. I think that's the other thing that we can get it recorded and then schedule the time to follow up and ask questions, go through it, give our take on it. And that takes less than the maybe 2 hours or several hours to teach the material again. So find ways to leverage, use technology, have a central place where that's accessed. They can go back to it and refer to it as well then. And so I think that's something else. And I think the pandemic drove that really home. I think it was starting to happen, before the pandemic, but really that, people started to see, gosh, we can leverage this and it's a time saver, and we can be more strategic in our meetings, when we're scheduling people to meet with our new hires.
I love that, Tamara. And I think as people leave your firm and they are training somebody on their positions or talking about a client that they've been managing and going through who the players are and what services we do and the historical stuff we know, recorded on Teams or Zoom, for crying out loud, all of that historical knowledge should be kept in a library. It's such a cool thing to do. So another thought about onboarding is that you really do need a 90-day assessment. And one that isn't just us assessing the poor new person who feels maybe scared, like they're going to the Wizard of Oz or something for a 90-day, I don't know, raking over the coals or something. But giving them a chance to say, yeah, hey, here's what's working for me. Here's what's not working for me. Here's what I'm hoping to do next now that I've had the 90-day tour. Here's some cool stuff I'd like to start doing, or I'd like you to start doing for me because I see other people doing it with you and I want to do it too, or whatever it is. And so it's intended to be a two-way dialogue. We use keep, stop, start. Here's what's working that we want you to keep doing. Here's what's not working that we think you should stop doing. And here's what we'd like you to start doing going forward. And we ask them to do the same for us as leaders. Mm-hmm. And they can name names if they want to. They can say, well, I really liked it when, so-and-so did this, and I hope I get to do more of that with them, or whatever it is we're looking for, like, now what? And it's been very rare at the 90-day point, if we did a quality job of screening, that we've had to have any sort of conversation like, this isn't working. It's mostly like, we love you to death, but we're afraid we're going to work you to death because we love you to death. So let's talk about how to manage this. And, it's just, I think, a good stop, regroup, huddle point. And so we think that should be a part of your onboarding best practices. And it doesn't have to be a huge, long amount of feedback or anything. But some feedback. And of course, we'd love you to give feedback along the way. So the 90-day feedback, no surprises, just like a 1-year feedback process, no surprises. We don't want to surprise people with feedback. But just a quick huddle to say, okay, now what's the next 9 months look like? And especially for those that are in new roles. Golly, I know from our perspective, we're organizational development people. So we're always like, should we move this together with that and make it a new role? So when that happens, you got to check in and say, okay, now, does your role make sense? Like, what would you change about the role? Where are the borders? Have you noticed that somebody's stepping all over your role somewhere that maybe part of what you own should be theirs, or vice versa? And so not just the person, but the role itself too.
Well, where are the holes? Where are the backups? Who's backing up who? I mean, it can help you fit that together. And a new person comes in, they have a whole different perspective and they're not attached to anything. We're attached to how it's supposed to look. So we could let go of some of that and say, how would you structure it coming in new? So it can be invigorating, for your group or your organization if you do that too. And I have to say, Jen, the 90-day, yes, ideally it's what's next and here's what's good and here's some refinements we can make. But those of us that might be avoiding, we have this feeling it's not working out. We can't quite put our finger on it. If you stop and do a keep, stop, start, and they stop and do a keep, stop, start, you'll be able to identify how we can help them either be successful or know early on this is not a good fit. And so I think that's the other thing, is it just gives you a point in time to stop and really, in Jen and I's case, we'd look each other in the eye and say, is this working or not? And we can give some specific feedback. But I think sometimes we avoid that, or we say it's not enough time, or whatever it might be. And I think that 90-day structure is really important for that too.
Yes, for sure. I love that, Tamera. And then I think the only other thing about that process is that, we need to hear these people like consultants, because of that lack of attachment that Tamera just talked about. They're like a hired consultant. They've come in and done a 90-day assessment and they have thoughts, and we should lean in and listen to all of them. And make sure they know we're interested in them, not have them think, I just need to get out with my skin attached of this 90-day feedback process. I hope I pass my 90-day feedback. If they're not doing well, you're not waiting to the 90th day to tell them.
Right.
And so, you need, if they are doing well, you say, hey man, really think about what would you do differently, or what ideas do you have? What innovations do you see? What parts of our process look silly or goofy? And anyway, I just think it's a beautiful chance to get that kind of feedback if we set up the right environment for that 90-day huddle.
I agree. I think that's a really great way to think about it, is that they're consultants. So I love that. Well, we would love to hear, what you're doing for your onboarding process, because we know a lot of firms and organizations, have been delving into this topic, and we would be happy to provide you with our orientation or an onboarding checklist. And then I wrote a blog on it last week, and we can make sure that that's attached with these tools as well. But reach out to us in email or social media, and we'd be happy to share that with you. And we will plan on seeing you next week at our next HR Huddle. In the meantime, have a great one. Thanks so much.
Thanks all.